Today's episode is about categorical data, and particularly this episode is about bar charts. So that's our first visualization of a very simple data type, and we'll start to see how that works. There are some default imports for Pandas and Matplotlib that you'll need. Pandas we've seen already. Matplotlib.pyplot is imported as plot, PLT, and those we'll use as defaults throughout this, and indeed most people will use that in their code. So I'll just switch to Notebook, and we'll import those now. So you should be able to run those, and there should be no particular output because they're just importing libraries. And now we'll get some data. So this is a data set which we've improved a little bit for you from the raw data. This is downloaded from a government website called UK Trade. And this is the coffee, tea, cocoa and spices import values by region in the UK in the first quarter of 2021. And we'll just have a quick look at that. So you see a number of columns here, the index column, the region, SITC1, SITC2, a value and a population pop. The region, we've got two unallocated regions and we'll need to do something about those. We've then got different regions of the UK, including Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. SITC1 is a grouping at a higher level, including food and live animals. And SITC2 is a subdivision of that. And here we've got 07, which is this one here. So we're going to use as our categorical variable, the region, and as our measure in that categorical value variable, the value, which is in thousands of pounds. There's a few things we need to do just to improve the data frame before we start to visualize it. And it's often the case that it's easier to do things if you improve the data frame a little bit in different ways. So we're going to wrangle it. Here we're going to change the columns number 3 from value in thousands to a smaller and shorter name, just value. In place in is true means that it's going to replace it in the data as is there. It's not going to create a copy. And so we'll see if we do trade df now that this column here is now just simply called value. So that's a really simple edit. So now we're going to do some data cleaning. And all we're going to do here is run these two commands which drop some of the rows, and they drop row 0 and they drop the last row. So they do this by indexing. Row 0 is obvious. The second one dropping the last row is less obvious, but if you take the shape, the 0 value of shape, that gives you the size in X and Y of the data frame. The shape value is the number of items, and that will correspond to the index of the last item in the data frame. And we have to do one more thing, which is reset the index, because we've lost the first and the last frame, so the indices won't be from 0 to n-1 anymore. And we'll just double check that by looking at it, and you'll see what's happened now. So we've lost the first and the last rows with unknown region. So now we need two lists. And we're going to use this for this approach because we want these two lists to draw. We want the list of regions, which will be the x-axis in our plot, and the list of values, which will be the trade for each of those. And we'll run this and then we'll explain what it's doing. So this is plotting a bar chart, and you will see the code's taken the two lists, regions and values. It said we're going to color the bars green. It's going to give a label for the x-axis, a label for the y-axis, and a title, and a rotation on the ticks. And that rotation means that the ticks don't overlap each other. They're quite wide, some of them, so we've rotated them so they drop down. And the result of that is this bar chart here, with that title we've given it, the vertical axis labeled, the horizontal axis labeled, and these are the categories. So we said the categorical variable here was region, so there's no particular order to the UK regions. So what we've done is ordered them by value. In fact, that was in the dataset already, by value of trade incoming to each region. And based on this, you'd think the southeast is importing way more coffee than the northeast. Where's the northeast on this? Here, right? So a lot more trade going to the southeast. So now we look at the population data that we said was in the trade df dataset. I'll just show you what we're going to do. So here's what we'll calculate. We're going to calculate a new column in the data frame, coffee per population. in fact coffee trade values per population member and in each region. And we're going to do that by doing this calculation here, which will divide the value in each of the column entries in rows by the corresponding population number. So that will give you pounds per member of the population in each region, multiplied by 1,000 because the original data in values was stored in thousands of pounds. And then we pull from that the list coffee pop, which is coffee per member of population, coffee per capita, which is just that whole column as a list. And then once we have that list, we can plot it with Matplotlib as before. So we're going to plot the same regions, but now we're plotting this coffee per capita value, well, coffee, tea, spices and trade. These things are automatically applied for you. You don't have to worry so much about the order. So plot bar, plot label, plot y label, title and xticks, these are all grouped inside Matplotlib. And when Jupyter in this case calls them Matplotlib draw function, plot function, they're shown here as applying to this whole plot. If you want to see how that works within Matplotlib in a standard Python file, you'll call plot.show after you've made all these calls to set up the plot. So that's why you're not seeing that plot.show call here. Okay, so one thing you'll notice here is it becomes a bit harder because the numbers are not in ascending or descending order to see who's bigger than which one. If you're trying to judge Northwest versus London, or maybe Wales versus Southwest, it's not very clear just visually looking at it, the order. So we can fix that by sorting the data frame. So we're going to sort by the parameter value per capita, coffee pop, and we're going to do it in descending order, so it'll be highest first, and we'll do in place true again, so it applies directly to the data frame, which doesn't create a copy of it. Then we need to extract the data again, so we need to extract the regions because the order of the regions has changed as we do the sort, as you'll see in a second, and we also need to extract back the per capita value of trade. So this is the final plot we'll look at here. So it's exactly the same call as above, but now we've sorted the regions in the order of the value per capita on the vertical axis. And you will see that now we can definitely tell that the Southwest has slightly more than Wales, London slightly more than Yorkshire and the Humber in terms of value of incoming coffee, tea, cocoa and spices. And I guess you could think, well, that means they drink a lot more coffee in the southeast than we do in, say, Scotland. But this is incoming trade to the region, and you don't know if that's being redistributed. And it's important to know that context because very often you'll see graphs claiming to be definitive about something, and you could publish this graph, and I'm sure some people have done, and say, well, look, southeast and London drink way more coffee than Wales and Scotland, but that's probably not true. What's probably true is that those regions import more, but then it's redistributed by, for example, the big supermarkets across the whole country. So context is everything when you're presenting data, and explaining to people context is a key part of visualization. Here we've not set that context so clearly in the visualization, but we'd have to put it in some narrative text around it. So that's categorical data and ways to plot it. Bar charts are a very popular way of doing it. Vertical bar charts, sometimes called column charts, I'm not sure I'd make a distinction if you're doing a horizontal bar chart, whether it's a bar chart or not, but some books do. Okay, so that's categorical data and categorical data plotting. And you can see here, in this case with nominal data, there's no particular order that we set the x-axis labels in. I'll just switch to show you this. This is just the source of that data we've been working with. If you want to find more, there's a huge amount of data on the UK Trade Info website. You just go there and search it and you'll find enormous quantities of data about all sorts of trade in the country. Okay, well, thank you for now.